you're a simp, bro. You're a simpleton. You're a simple mind. You're concerned about other people's relationships instead of improving your own physical appearance and your own ability to attract women.
Ethan Klein is a YouTuber who everybody loves. Wait, no, that's not right. Let's try this again. Ethan Klein is a YouTuber who everyone loved. And slowly, but surely, the very same people who respected him and looked up to him so much are growing to hate him.
I feel like I would like to be a comedian, but every time I sit down to write jokes, they always end up being about poop. I know a lot of people I talk to when after they poop, they have a certain way that they wipe. And then everyone who wipes that way assumes that everyone else in the world wipes the same way that they do.
This is a clip from the oldest video that is currently public on the H3H3 Productions YouTube channel. Published on March 21st, 2013, the video was one of the many early videos from Ethan and Hila Klein, a couple that in the next half a decade would become two of the most popular people in the YouTube community. While their early content focused more on skits and humorous YouTube poop-style edits of what would later become classic internet memes, what they really became known for were their reaction videos about other YouTubers, where Hila would film Ethan watching videos and cracking jokes about them, while also delivering some pretty valid criticism for some of the ridiculous stunts that people like Joey Salads, the Bradbury brothers, and the rest of the H3 Rogues gallery would pull on their own channels.
I don't get the message. What are we trying to teach kids? To be paranoid, to not trust anyone? Well, the message is clear.
It was an exciting time to be on YouTube watching these two blow up and become so well respected.
Oh, I can't believe this. How many views does this have, Hila?
Millions.
2 million. 2 million views.
They were just so likable. Ethan was humble and goofy and funny, and Hila, being behind the camera, allowed the audience to feel more immersed in the video and almost take part in it. It wasn't extremely original, but it didn't need to be, because for the time and the type of content that they were doing, they did it best. So, what happened? Where did that Ethan and Hila go? Just 4 years ago, very few people would have been able to foresee the shifting tides to come. Not that the signs weren't there to begin with.
I've been putting off talking about this because it's just, I'm actually friends with these guys, so it's awkward and it's uncomfortable. But if for some reason, we as a community have been giving these guys a pass.
When I ask most people what in specific made them lose respect for Ethan, it's never one thing. It's always an accumulation of smaller events piling on top of each other that slowly whittles away their ability to see him in a positive light. And I think that he's been given a pretty fair shake in the grand scheme of things. People have certainly afforded him much more charitability than he gave to people like Jake Paul or any of the other creators who he lambasted back in the day on his own channel. Ethan and Hila are very aware that people dislike them. It's impossible not to be with the amount of videos that have been posted about the topic. But when they do address criticism, which isn't often, they tend to cherry pick aspects of specific arguments that they think will help them to discredit their critics altogether.
Besides me
It's
openly...
because you said you didn't like him.
Yeah. He has a problem. His fragile little clown heart was hurt when we did the podcast, and then I said afterwards in a comment that I hated him.
Which works in the short term, sure, but it's a poor way to respond when the sheer volume of the criticism is only going to become greater as time passes. I want to sit down today and have a conversation with you, Ethan. I want to send you a message. Consider this video a letter to Ethan Klein, and a moment for him to seriously consider just why everyone hates him. Our story today begins with a very talented and handsome young Jew named Gokanaru. In late 2018, Gokanaru posted a feature-length documentary where he went over the variety of reasons as to why he and a number of other people no longer respected Ethan as a person.
What do you think? Did Ethan, A, discuss the video with Levy prior to uploading it? B, upload it with no warning whatsoever? Or B, because the answer is B.
This video would accumulate more than 1 million views, and while there certainly was a demographic of people who didn't like Ethan before, this upload in particular catapulted all of their opinions into an entertaining and digestible video that anyone could see. You don't have to read the subreddit or pay attention to Twitter for this one, he laid it all out. This video received an overwhelming amount of support at the time, and Ethan ended up getting a lot of crap for it. Probably rightfully so. He made a lot of mistakes. Soon after this video received a lot of traction and praise, Ethan Klein went on an episode of his own podcast and addressed a lot of the criticism. He seemed to be genuinely remorseful about a lot of what happened, and he wanted to admit a lot of his faults.
People have been saying about me recently that I'm a hypocrite, that I prioritize money over everything else, that I've thrown friends under the bus, that I'm ignorant and poorly informed, and spread misinformation, that I'm arrogant, that I cannot handle criticism, and that I've used people. And let me just say this, okay, for the record, that I am guilty of all of those things. And I'm not going to quantify it or make excuses or anything.
Granted, he didn't specifically name Gokunaru's video. In fact, it seemed like he went out of his way not to name any of his critics. And he also censored the comments section to filter Gokunaru's name and the title of his video. But everyone just sort of gave Ethan a pass. We all wanted him to improve, and even if he wasn't naming the people who were criticizing him, we were all just glad that he was owning up to his mistakes and expressed what seemed to be a genuine effort to be better. Ethan got something that a lot of YouTubers just don't get. He was given something that he didn't even give to most of the people that he used to criticize and make fun of endlessly. He got a second chance. Everyone collectively wanted to see him improve, but that didn't happen. Instead, things got much worse. And now, he's disliked more than he ever has been. I'd love to be able to direct you all to check out Gokunaru's video, as it was really good and would serve as a great companion piece to this video, but I can't, because YouTube removed it. As many of you are probably already aware, a relatively recent update was made to YouTube's community guidelines in regards to its harassment policy. In the update, they assert that they want to prevent harassment on this platform, which they define as content that threatens individuals. On the surface, of course, this kind of update would be welcome, as no one on the site wants legitimate harassment to occur. The problem here is that their definition of harassment is very loose. Additionally, their explanation seems to be targeting commentary content in the vein of Leafy is here or Colossal is crazy, with one of their examples that they have listed seemingly being lifted directly from their videos. Here are some examples of content that's not allowed on YouTube, repeatedly showing pictures of someone and then making statements like, "Look at this creature's teeth, they're so disgusting," with similar commentary targeting intrinsic attributes throughout the video.
I would say, no, I'm good.
No, that's it. That is it. He's not human. He's a fucking lizard!
On December 11th, these new guidelines were announced by YouTube to a relatively large backlash on Twitter, which was mostly sparked because of the removal of 3 videos. Content Cop, Leafy by iDubbbz.
As you can probably tell, I can hardly contain myself right now, because today is the day we get to bully Leafy!
Fine Bros React by Psychic Pebbles.
We've done Kids React, Teens React, Elders React, YouTubers React, Holocaust Survivors React, Down Syndromers React, Babies React, and Child Molesters React. What else can we do?
The Death of H3H3 Productions, Video Vigilante by Gokunaru. The similarity between all of these videos clearly was that their purpose, in part, was to make fun of people. They all involved criticism paired with making fun of the subject in question, albeit in a relatively light-hearted way. Gokunaru's video was extremely well received, and because of his respect in the commentary community, he received a lot of support on Twitter and YouTube, with a lot of people rallying for the video to be reinstated.
Honestly, Ethan, you've kind of inspired me, man. Because that's a really good method of making it clear that you hate someone.
Amidst this Twitter explosion and the backlash from the creator community on Twitter, YouTuber Keemstar came out with his own theory on the subject.
Most of the videos criticizing you, H3, when you were 100% messing up a year ago have been removed from YouTube deemed as harassment. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you have a meeting with Susan Wojcicki earlier this year? I swear I heard you say that somewhere. Found it.
There was a bit of a back and forth on Twitter from Ethan of H3H3 and Keemstar, mostly made up of petty insults, but Keem's tweets did start a conversation about whether or not Ethan could have wanted to have Gokunaru's video about him taken down.
Now, because YouTube is saying that they made this decision based on talking to creators and that, you know, a video, the #1 video criticizing you was removed off of YouTube, I brought up the question, did H3H3 complain to YouTube?
In a creator blog written by Susan Wojcicki from April of this year, it was referenced how Ethan and Hila had met with Susan to discuss their position on the platform, which, of course, lines up with social media posts from the clients that were released around that time. Later, in this blog, the main concerns of these creators is listed, saying the following, and they say the online harassment from fellow creators is growing and needs to be addressed. The blog post is clearly a precursor to the rules that had been enforced at the end of the year. While it doesn't make it clear here that Ethan was the one pushing for these additions to the harassment policy, the now deleted video about Leafy is here from Ethan outlines his position on these things and how he feels that bullying and harassment have no place in the community.
But you gotta, draw the line somewhere. At this point, it's literally just bullying. And honestly, I want to thank Tommy for actually, making the statement and being like, hey, this is happening. At the end of the day, they're doing their thing, they're shaking their dick, people are watching, people are having fun, that's cool. But Leafy is just out there bullying people, and it's just fucked up. And with the titles and the clickbait, I mean, we used to make fun of SoFlo and all these prank channels for like making YouTube a worse place. But right now, these commentary channels are kind of the worst thing that's happened to YouTube. And for some reason, everybody's giving them a pass.
Moving back to Ethan's replies to Keemstar on Twitter, he never actually outright denies these accusations at all, instead just mocking Keemstar and pointing out flaws with his theory, which were likely just bait to begin with. He posted an entire Twitter video, presumably edited by one of his interns, that sought to make fun of Keemstar for talking about YouTube drama. Ethan seemingly forgot that he himself often discusses drama on his own podcast.
You immediately shifted the whole conversation to be about how I'm a clown because I talk about Jake Paul and rice gum. Granted, so have you, and you've already tried this argument and criticism of me before and got labeled a hypocrite by everybody. All the commentators came out and said, well, H3H3 is a hypocrite. Go look at his podcast. He's constantly talking about Jake Paul, rice gum, and pretty much anything that's trending.
Speaking of the podcasts, Ethan talked about this Twitter back and forth on his show for a few minutes, during which his responses were puzzling.
Now, I said to him, I challenge you to show me one additional video other than this one that was removed, and it was crickets. But like, imagine you're a newsman, okay? And how insane you have to be to make such a fucking blanketly...
Many expected him to clear up the situation on the show and outline exactly why Keem's theory was wrong. Instead, he seemingly repeated his track record from social media, mocking Keem's statements instead of addressing any of the legitimacy that could be buried within them.
Keemstar is a dangerous psychopath. I think he probably has a small penis as well. I could just tell. He's just hard to even imagine he's a real person, His fragile little clown heart was hurt when we did the podcast, and then I said afterwards in a comment that I hated him. Wouldn't be the first time. Keemstar is obsessed with me.
Curiously enough, he also seems to pretend as though he has never heard of or seen Gokunaru's video.
No, one.
So you really think that Susan, the CEO of YouTube, came here to meet us to talk about you and another guy that made a video about us? Really? You think that's how she uses her time?
He's obsessed with me, dude.
Yeah.
You want to know how I met?
Came here and we talked about some guy that we don't know that made a video about us. That makes total
sense. The CEO of YouTube came out to hear me bitch about that.
Additionally, Ethan seems to actually agree with the video being taken down.
This video was removed, and if I look into it for more than just 2 seconds, you'll remember I said there was a new rule said that it includes content simulating violence. So if I have to just take a harebrained guess, it probably wasn't a conspiracy. It was probably just the fact that he has a gun up to my head, like to execute me.
For someone who used to be heralded as a champion of the YouTube community and claims not to be involved with this at all, it's odd that Ethan doesn't even seem to disagree with YouTube's policy update. If he really was in favor of the community and being anti-censorship, wouldn't he speak out against this? Wouldn't he reach out to YouTube to say he doesn't agree with the video being taken down? Wouldn't he make a tweet about it? Just express some mild discontent with it? At all, especially considering how he has a direct contact at YouTube, previously met with the CEO, and has millions of followers across all of his platforms. There are very few people who are in as unique a position as Ethan is to speak out against what is happening here, and giving back to the same community that helped him and his wife out so much when they were going through some very rough times would be much appreciated. I'd say it would be the right thing to do. Imagine how good Ethan would look if he stood up against YouTube and publicly spoke about not wanting Gokunaru's video taken down, even though that video was critical of him. But he can't do that because the criticism clearly still bothers him.
This means that between the Gus Johnson podcast, where you can see I was in his history, and Susan visiting them, there was only 8 days. So I was on his mind about, give or take, probably 8 days before he talked to Susan. I don't know what the fuck that means, okay? That's not definitive proof by any means, but definitely makes it a little fucking weird that, he pretends he doesn't know anything about what the fuck, it's like impossible, that he was talking to Susan about anything. I don't, want to think he fucking did it, and I don't have proof he did it, so I won't say that he did it, but yeah, no, something feels shady. His podcast just did not feel very honest.
That's why he and Hila didn't name Chris and pretended like they had no idea who he was.
And in case there's any doubt in anybody's mind that, he's actually seen the video, if you go to the episode of the podcast where he has Gus Johnson on, in that podcast episode, when he clicks the video tab, you can see that my username is in his history.
Some will say the evidence that Ethan took the video down or wanted YouTube to take it down is extremely circumstantial, and I can't disagree with that notion. However, with Ethan opting not to be a champion for small creators, it leaves a number of questions about his loyalty to the community and whether or not he even cares. But nothing good lasts forever, and this criticism would slowly start to fade away over the next 2 months, until Ethan's next big controversy.
Well, it's no secret that H3H3 had attracted a large number of detractors in recent years, and there are multiple videos with good arguments and details to back them up. Ethan's responses have historically been few and far between. That's why when Ethan finally released a video actually addressing some form of criticism head-on, it was fairly significant, at least conceptually. There was, however, one small problem though. The video he actually decided to respond to was terrible. Oh, wait a minute. This guy follows me on Twitter. What I meant to say was, no, the video itself was terrible. Mutahar, who also goes by Some Ordinary Gamer, made an objectively bad video based on false pretenses with an incredibly ironic amount of overconfidence sprinkled in. This is self-admitted, by the way. The video has been removed, and at the time of recording, Mutahar has already released a thorough apology. On April 10th, 2020, a video called The Hypocrisy of Ethan Klein was unleashed into the YouTube space to mostly positive reception. Mutahar talks about how he feels Ethan has become fairly egotistical and lost touch with his roots. He uses terms like pseudo-intellectual to describe him, and he discusses Ethan heavily pushing his politics on social media. He shows and explains a few cringe takes on billionaires that Ethan has made, and then lastly he mentions the FUPA fund, which we'll be getting to eventually. Look, that's all well and good. I'm sure many people would agree or disagree with a lot of those points. However, the problem arises when the entire video is based around the fact that Ethan donation shamed Jeff Bezos' $100 million donation, which literally wasn't fucking possible because the evidence that Mutahar verbally mentioned took place before Jeff even donated the $100,000. He also requests that Ethan make N95 respirator masks, which is apparently impossible for him to even fucking do. So this is a disaster.
Because this is the same guy that lives in a $10 million fucking mansion, look it up, and hasn't donated shit as far as I'm considered to COVID-19. And you know how I fucking believe that? That's because this is the same guy that donated only $1,000 to Team Trees when that was out. See, I can do the same fucking thing you do, Ethan, but I'm not gonna do it because I'm not a fucking hypocrite when it comes to this shit.
But he conveniently skipped over the fact that we have donated every time a tragedy has hit. When the hurricane hit Houston recently, we raised $237,000. When Humongous was in need, we raised $156,000. When the Paradise Fires hit California and ravaged that whole town, we raised $159,000.
Muta also makes sweeping generalizations about Ethan's generosity, which aged incredibly poorly, as he would announce in just a few days that he would be donating $100,000 to people in the Twitter equivalence of a stimulus package to his followers on social media. If that wasn't bad enough, Mutahar in a follow-up video jokingly tried to take credit for this showing of generosity.
Oh shit, a lot has happened the past couple days, huh? Ooh, $100,000 donation by our friend Ethan Klein. I wonder what may have caused that, but you know what? It is what it is.
Which led to Ethan bodying him yet again, showcasing proof that this was in the works even before Muta made his video.
Oh shit. I wonder what may have caused that, but you know what? It is what it is.
I wonder what may have caused that? It was definitely me. We had been planning for a while of how we can help during the COVID-19 crisis. Here's proof, because he's going to take all the credit for our donation. We've been talking about this for a while. And what we did is we donated $100,000 on Twitter of our own money.
It's my opinion that this video earned a response from Ethan, not because Muta was big or because he even felt like addressing criticism. I think he saw this as a really safe opportunity to deflect criticism by dunking on someone who did a genuinely bad job deterring other people from making videos in the first place. Again, that's just a hunch. Rather than addressing some of the harder questions raised by creators like Gokunaru in a point-to-point style like he's doing here, the majority of this video is just Ethan repeating himself for the duration, bashing the shit out of Mutahar for his lack of research on the topic.
You're gonna use a pandemic to push some fucking ideology or some political belief or some nonsense, but I'll take my 10 W's for sure.
10 W's? You want 10 W's, dude. How about a D for delusional?
I can't say I particularly blame him either. While I can understand why Ethan hammered down that point home, there were some points that came off as outrageous to myself and many other viewers. The big one was the doxing claim.
Because this is the same guy that lives in a $10 million fucking mansion, look it up.
So now he gets his fans all riled up about what an evil dude I am, and then encourages them to go find out where I live.
When Muda says Ethan lives in a $10 million mansion, look it up, he's not intentionally encouraging people to look up Ethan's address. He's talking about the amount of wealth you've accumulated and used multiple websites that documented the cost of your home as a status symbol.
Because this is the same guy that lives in a $10 million fucking mansion, look it up.
Well, there's a website called Dirt that is owned by Variety that specializes in essentially doxing celebrities. So to prop up this leak of our home address while simultaneously lying to your fans about me is, in your own words,
a shitty fucking take.
If privacy was your biggest concern, and you genuinely believe this was an attempt to dox you, surely you wouldn't have A, mentioned this, B, shown the article and where to find it, or C, shown multiple angles of your house in skits of your video. Don't you think that's some kind of leap in judgment?
You know, as a fan of yours, Muta, some ordinary gamer, I have to say, you've really gone downhill. I really miss the old Muta. For example, this is what old Muta would have said.
Exposed videos where people are leaking private messages from somebody and their ex-girlfriend or some shit like that, and then I've seen other videos where people are leaking some like fucking really private shit at this point, without the person's consent, and it's like, it's the same guy that lives in a $10 million fucking mansion, look it up, look it up, look it up.
This is the shittiest take, man. You're comparing Muda's stance on leaking private messages and private identifying details to the dude sourcing an article from Variety. I mean, come on. This has even been posted on your own subreddit before. I found it in one Google search.
And as a side note, the guy who swatted us right here, a neo-Nazi, and may I say you are looking very master race today, is in prison for swatting us. So kids, this is a PSA to you. Don't swat.
Then you instantly show the guy who swatted your house to paint this in the worst light possible in an attempt to make a nothing point seem more damning. Then he also made an extreme overreaction to another point Muda made.
Now, I'm not going to go up into auditing every little piece of this. I'm going to leave that up to any other Reddit detective. I'm going to basically bury my hatchet where it is right now.
So here he is suggesting that Reddit detectives need to audit our giveaway, that I am such a scumbag, of course, in his and everybody's mind, that I would lie, that I wouldn't even give this money away as I've claimed. So yes, he encourages Reddit detectives to audit our giveaway.
Dude, he's literally not doing that. What Muda's saying here is that he isn't gonna sit and try to poke holes in Ethan's generous donation. If there's something wrong with his giveaway, the internet will figure it out, because that's what the internet does. Do you think Muda leads the Reddit detectives? Do you think he's the one running all these ops to see if things are true or not? While I absolutely believe that Ethan's help relief is 100% legitimate, I also don't fault people for being skeptical regarding anything involving money on the internet ever. In regards to the donation shaming of Jeff Bezos, which was the premise of the video, Ethan says this.
But he's so certain that I donation shamed Jeff Bezos. Imagine coming and making a video with such righteous anger about something that never even happened.
However, if you scroll back to the H3 podcast when they discuss the Australian wildfires, in a completely different context, mind you, let me just stress that now, this doesn't help Muda's case at all. Ethan asked if Bezos' contribution was kind of a bitch move, because it's apparently the amount he makes in just 6 minutes.
Now, I'm not usually someone... Money is money, donation is a donation, it's all good. But what do you make of Jeff Bezos donating $690,000? He makes that in 6 minutes.
Love it. Love it. That's really awesome.
So is that kind of a bitch move when you're
I was wondering what's with the weird number, so it's $1 million Australian dollars. That's why it's a weird.
That's why it's so.
But he knows what a dollar is. He's saving himself money.
I personally find it funny how confident Ethan was with a clip of this situation not existing. Just because Ethan took an issue with a $600,000 donation for the Australian wildfires doesn't mean he'd necessarily criticize a $100 million donation to the coronavirus. But this all had to come from somewhere, right? Well, it did. A few weeks prior to the videos released, H3H3 had gone on a lengthy Twitter rampage regarding Jeff Bezos and billionaires, caked in his political beliefs. I'm curious if billionaires are gonna ride or die for America in the next 12 weeks and mass-produce ventilators, or if they'll retreat to their apocalypse bunkers. We're about to find out if they have any value to society or not. Hashtag, where is Jeff Bezos? Thank God Ethan Klein is here to determine if Jeff Jeff Bezos has value to society or not. This isn't inherently cringy at all. He went on to respond to comments asking if Bezos had ever contributed to society, and Ethan stated, "Let's see him jump into action for the greater good and not for profit," implying Jeff Bezos has never contributed to the world without the motivation being a profit.
But what do you make of Jeff Bezos donating $690,000? So is that kind of a bitch move?
In response to criticism that he should put his own money where his mouth is, Ethan states our businesses are shut down, and all of our 20 employees are being paid their full salaries and health insurance for the entire duration of this. I'm not really sure what more I can do than that. I don't have $130 billion with unlimited manufacturing capacity. Which, ironically enough, the community didn't know this, but this tweet came after Ethan decided to do the help stimulus package based on the DM proof he's shown. Even though your talks for the help package originated before this, I'm pretty sure this tweet was the source for why people were skeptical, since you quite literally said you're not sure what else more you can do than that. And then you did, and you already knew what you were gonna do because it was already planned. When receiving the criticism that he only targeted billionaires and he's still significantly more wealthy than the average American, Ethan responded by saying Jeff Bezos is $130 billion richer than him. It's just a super cringe, eat the rich kind of mentality that you usually hear from a teenager who doesn't want to work for a living. But it's existing in this millionaire who's acting like he's cosplaying a middle-class guy going paycheck to paycheck. It just, look, I see why people were upset about this. But obviously, dude, it's politics. I speculated that Ethan's political shift may have come from moving to Cali from New York as a joke, but Ethan actually made a similar point in response to all of this.
Like, I think that in a certain point in my career, I was making a lot of videos about social justice warriors and feminists and all this shit. And I think that I attracted quite a bit of more conservative leaning audience there. The truth is, anyone that follows this podcast or knows, I'm definitely a Democrat, and I'm definitely extremely liberal socially and economically. I'm not one of them. They thought I was one of them, and I'm not.
Where I think the disconnect is found would be that Ethan probably attracted a more conservative fan base through his pandering to some anti-SJW style content a few years back when it was the popular trend. I don't think this tweet chain he made won over any of the fans he attracted by making his man-spreading video, his defensive humongous, or his digital whiteface video. I don't think they were really interested in the billionaire rant. And that's the kind of price you pay when playing with politics on the internet. But besides that, Mudahar also addressed his disdain for the H3 podcast, and let's be honest here, he's not the only one.
Imagine coming.
The creation of the H3 podcast was a pivotal point for Ethan and Hila and their brand at large. They had just finished winning the lawsuit of a lifetime with quite literally millions of people rallying behind them to support their content and them as people. It's hard to point out anyone that was more universally loved than them at the time. But from videos and Ethan's behavior at the time, it was obvious that he wasn't feeling the best about the videos that he was producing, and he had become very cynical about YouTube as a whole.
I was a better, more mature person before internet fame or celebrity. I was a more whole person. All of a sudden, I was like grouchier, more arrogant, more cynical, and just a ton of negativity, horrible feelings, and I was just ended up being miserable. And I boiled over. I couldn't handle it. I didn't want to go on like that. I think I kind of like snapped a little bit, and I couldn't make H3 videos anymore. I just couldn't do it.
At this time, the H3 podcast had already been released and was slowly but surely building up a catalog of episodes. It was very clear to most of their fans that the show was taking priority over their videos.
Thank God we had the podcast to something so that I was still there for you guys and something that I could still work on, so I wasn't just completely hopelessly falling off the planet. But I just realized that I just became a really awful, shitty person, and I hated myself.
Which, make no mistake, many of them weren't that happy about, but the podcast wasn't abysmal in the eyes of most. The couple would post videos justifying their change of focus onto the podcast, explaining that the adpocalypse had caused a lot of issues for their financial situation.
We are very excited to announce that we're moving the H3 podcast to Twitch TV, and we'll be live streaming it there. If you can't make it, don't worry, we're uploading it to our new H3 podcast channel, which is also in the description, so go subscribe there. It'll be up there one day after it appears live on Twitch.
It was just an important wake-up call, I think, to all of us, because we were all so comfortable on YouTube, and so now we got to figure out new things. But I think, we will figure out new things.
And you know what? That's fine. I understand that at the end of the day, the couple wants to run a business, and they need to pull in a consistent flow of cash for that to happen. Their reaction videos no doubt took a lot of time and effort to make. They had to spend hours coming up with the jokes and writing skits for it. They had to go through the process of actually recording the video and editing it, no doubt taking up the better part of a week. Then, they go to post this video to show it to their fans, and instead of making thousands of dollars every upload, they make, well, almost nothing. I know how that yellow dollar sign feels after putting a lot of effort into the video, and it's never a nice thing to wake up to. But with the H3 podcast, they can spend a pretty short amount of time preparing for the show and rake in thousands of dollars from a number of different avenues. Gamer from Mars did a pretty good video about the situation, which I'll link in the description below, where he estimated that they could make as much as $100,000 from each episode.
So assuming that they charge based off 1 million viewers, which seems about right when you include audio-only streams and downloads of the episode, that means that they make $25,000 for one of them. The thing is, since their show is so popular and a lot of companies want to be promoted to their audience, they sometimes get 4 ad reads an episode, meaning that the sponsored messages pull in $100,000.
And it's okay if they make money, who cares, right? The problem is that since then, the podcast has had a lot of issues. A lot of issues. The Bill Burr episode is commonly cited as the worst episode of the H3 podcast, and frankly, I agree with that.
How's your bed, mate? You do your studies? Well, why not? You know, that shit. And he also had a zillion kids, so I mean, yeah.
Really? How many siblings do you have?
I don't know, dude. The internet's too fucking weird to give out all that information.
Oh, you don't even want to say how many because you're afraid that it will
by all means,
compromise
keep
your
talking
privacy.
about it. Is there any way you can cut this out? I'm honest, dude. Like,
Seriously?
Yeah, no, dude. There's fucking lunatics out there.
Okay.
Well, off the air, I'll tell you.
All right.
Jeez. I love how surprised he is. Jeez.
Well,
there's
you can mention the amount.
Absolutely crazy people out there.
That being said, there are a number of legitimately entertaining episodes of the show. I liked the one with Shane Dawson a lot, as well as the episodes with Boogie, Dunkey, Post Malone, and Jordan Peterson. But there is one example that I want to talk about in particular. Ideally, the main appeal to a podcast hosted by 2 popular YouTubers would be to hear from the guests that they have on the show. What makes podcasts like Joe Rogan so entertaining is the conversations that are had on it with celebrities and people that we otherwise wouldn't hear from in that format. People like Elon Musk, Edward Snowden, Bernie Sanders, Mike Tyson, all captivating people in their own right and figures that have shaped the culture that we enjoy today. However, Joe gives each guest the same treatment and doesn't play favorites. They all have a chance to talk to him in depth about a variety of subjects for as long as they feel is necessary. Some people come back for more episodes after the fact, and that's fine. If some episodes do better than others, then it makes sense that the fans would want to hear from those people even more. But Joe doesn't really play favorites with these people. He gives everyone their show to speak their message. Ethan doesn't do this. William Osman is a pretty popular pop science channel on YouTube who was a fan of H3 and created a talking beanie to go along with the channel meme of Ethan wearing comically oversized beanies.
Let's go!
Ethan invited him to go on the show and give it to him for 20 minutes, and then he just sort of shooed him away as if his worth was up and he didn't need to be on the show anymore. The entire thing was just very awkward, and it didn't feel like William was treated very well. Ethan wasn't explicitly mean to him. In fact, he expressed that he wanted to hang out with him after the show, but it didn't help that the rest of the show wasn't very entertaining compared to that small 20-minute segment. It didn't help that instead of doing his proper research and becoming well acquainted with all of William's content before the show, he just kind of talked about his house being burnt down and nothing else. He didn't even include William's name in the title until enough people got angry about it in the comments that he eventually caved and tacked it on to the end.
They said we're going to be on for like 20 minutes. That doesn't make me feel like a very special guest, but sort of a temperate, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like supplemental to whatever show. So what we've learned is that we're not exciting enough.
Creeps online. I'm going to teach these kids a lesson.
What could have been a great opportunity to promote an up-and-coming creator instead came across like a way for him to use William for some quick entertainment and then just get him off the podcast as quickly as possible.
We got a 2-shot, right?
Is this live right now?
Do you guys mind? Yeah, we're live. Do you guys mind swapping out?
That's fine.
This is...
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty clear from the show that Ethan took a lot of inspiration from popular radio broadcaster Howard Stern, to the point that he attempted to basically recreate it with the H3 podcast. One of the main appeals to the Howard Stern show when it was at its peak of popularity was the assortment of wacky characters that would call into the show to give their opinions on Howard, the other members of the show, and whatever was relevant at the time. These eccentric people basically created the show and made it as zany as it was.
When I saw that, I was like, you know what? If we're talking about Whack Pack, Howard Stern Whack Pack that we want to build of our own, Shoe Nice is like the
Yeah.
Beetlejuice.
Ethan attempted to essentially create his own group like this and had a variety of guests, most prominently Skippy the Virgin, who was in one of Ethan's videos and would later appear on the podcast, Kyle, the guy who was addicted to dating grandmas, and Shoe Nice. The former two were somewhat entertaining, and it was good to see these two interacting sometimes. The two even called into the show once together and had a bit of an argument, and I admit, it was kind of funny, but ultimately, it just comes across like a cheap imitation of what Howard was trying to do. What made Howard's show so entertaining is that these wacky people were just naturally flocking to the radio show and calling in. With these guys, it feels very contrived because, well, it is. They've already been on reality TV, they've been in Ethan's videos, they're treated as entertainment from the onset of the show. When Ethan does have someone who's, pretty naturally acquainted with the show, come on, it's Shoe Nice.
2 glue sticks, and go. Definitely not the flavor of the old Elmer's paste.
In which case, he just taunted someone who is clearly very mentally ill and needs help and is just grasping for fame. Man, wouldn't it be pathetic if you bashed this guy in front of millions of people and made fun of what is clearly a very serious mental condition?
When I saw that, I was like, you know what? If we're talking about Whack Pack, Howard Stern Whack Pack that we want to build of our own, Shoe Nice is like the Beetlejuice. We were trying I tweeted at him, I emailed him, and this fucking psycho that spent 5 hours replying 100 times, I can't get a hold of him. I have no way of getting a hold of him. I've summoned the spirit of Shoe Nice. Come back into the comments. Give us a way to contact you. I want you to be part of this show, Shoe Nice. I think you have what it takes to be the first official member of the H3 Goof Gang.
This guy is literally responding to his own comments on multiple accounts. He's got some problems. Gee, I wonder if Ethan ever made some sanctimonious and annoying video about how harassment is bad and we shouldn't mock these people that are clearly just low-hanging fruit. Imagine if he had bashed other people for doing the same exact thing he's doing right now.
But the whole bullying thing, it's like they seem to have focused in specifically on kids and vulnerable people. It's almost like a community made just for bullying. If you can find people worthy of being made fun of, then it's all great.
So we know that Ethan has treated guests poorly in the past, but what happens when he's left to speak freely and give his own perspective on these subjects? There seems to be a few consistent themes with the podcast, and while a few people have covered a number of different individual incidents pretty well, there is one specific subject that Ethan weighed in on, which I feel he fumbled the most.
Pro Jared is this phenomenal... I've never seen the likes of which a drama has totally destroyed and burned a man alive. He was consumed by it.
As many of you probably know, Pro Jared is an American gaming YouTuber who got into some controversy last year when his wife, Heidi O'Farrell, accused him of infidelity and being an abusive husband. Shortly after, a few people came out on Twitter to accuse Jared of messaging him in a very explicit way, while knowing that they were underage. This was a narrative that most people bought into, and the drama pretty quickly consumed Jared's entire reputation, with him losing hundreds of thousands of subscribers and quickly turning into public enemy number one.
Now, Jared, what fascinates me too is like, this is the guy at the center of this. By the way, this is the picture he chooses to put on all of his videos. Well, I've seen pictures of him that aren't this bad, but I find it fascinating that this is, of all of them, is the one he chooses to present to the world. Then it comes out that Pro Jared has been soliciting not safe for work pictures from fans and has sent a few of his own. Worse still, these were sent while he was married. Heidi was, however, fully aware that he was sexting with fans for a few years, which to me is a huge question mark.
Most people took the accusations as fact, something that I myself am guilty of, and while I never made a video about it, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't take the accusations at face value and didn't look into them further. I'm genuinely sorry for this, and I wish I had taken a much more level-headed approach to the topic. A few months after all of this occurred, Bedhead Bernie had me narrate a video of his about the Pro Jared situation, where he works to debunk most of the accusations that were thrown at Jared and show a number of inconsistencies with the narrative. There's a lot of things to say about Pro Jared's situation, like that he epitomizes cancel culture, and that the narrative everyone bought into, many still to this day, was fabricated. In this video, we're going to attempt to correct the record and set some things straight, as well as analyze what made Pro Jared's scandal reach so many eyes. Shortly after this video picked up steam, Jared released his own about the subject, which was his first time speaking publicly about the drama since it began to unfold, where he actually praised the video in question and said that it was mostly correct.
Give me for anything too. And there will still be people who are still angry about it or won't accept the nudes blog thing or whatever, and that's okay. They are allowed to feel how they feel. The next time you see someone being canceled with the mob attacking them and going after them, ask, what's the other side's story? Is there more to this? How do you know they deserve to be bullied and shamed? Through evidence or through public opinion?
In the months following this, a number of YouTubers apologized for their poor conduct and took down their videos about Jared where they had pushed these false allegations, apologizing for any harm they had done to him and vowing not to do it again. Ethan did not. At all.
Now, how long's it been since the pro Jared controversy happened? It's been a long
That was in
time.
May.
I find it funny. He goes, not one person reached out to me. Not one person. And he showed a picture of us, our podcast.
Amongst others that talked about him.
Yeah, but I'm like, dude, you didn't speak. If you would have put out a statement, I would have covered it. You didn't say anything. So, okay, what misinformation did I spread about Jared? I think none. I was reporting what happened, talking about how crazy it was, how the kickback, I had never seen anything like that, losing 25% of your fan base in a day or whatever.
Ethan's basic argument here is that he was simply reporting on the situation and didn't genuinely make accusations towards Jared other than what he had admitted to publicly. He also goes on to say that he finds what Jared did to be extremely irresponsible.
And to my surprise, people really responding to this video. He's getting his subs back, lots of likes, and people are responding, but I think he kind of pulled a fast one on everyone. I'm going to be totally honest. I'm going to keep it 100. I think the guy's a total sleaze who should not have a fan base. Dude, you can't, if you have a community, if you're famous, you cannot put yourself in the position to be getting nudes from fans, especially young fans. He goes, all he shows to prove that he asked, he goes, real quick, are you 18 plus? They're a 16-year-old. Of course they'll say yes. That's why you don't put yourself in that position to begin with. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I know he just said that to cover his ass in case something like this happened, which he half expected. I'm shocked that people are buying this. This guy is a sleaze, dude.
I would say that what happened to Jared absolutely is an instance of cancel culture. The term isn't limited to someone making a bad joke. We've seen plenty of people who were, admittedly, acting somewhat irresponsible with their platform, then have these wild accusations thrown out there about them, which was exactly what happened to Jared. He was messaging young fans in an explicit manner, this much is true, and I agree that he probably shouldn't have done that. When you're running a business, it's never a good idea to try and hook up with your fan, and it's also never a good idea to message people as an adult when you don't know the age of the person on the other side for sure. However, there is a difference between being dumb and being malicious. The fact that he didn't seem to have any sympathy for a man having his life ruined over accusations that were provably false, and then went on to make fun of his appearance in response to someone telling him that he should apologize for being a proponent of a false narrative is very telling of his character. I'm not here to be the joke police and say that you can't make fun of how someone looks, but from an optics perspective, this was a less than stellar time to do it.
Let's see here. Listen to this.
Something that is important to note.
By the way, he managed to look like as pathetic as possible and as greasy as possible in the video.
To go back to Ethan's initial argument, let's say that he was just reporting on the news and wasn't really making accusations about Jared. They had a discussion about it, it was drama consuming the internet at the time, so it was fair for them to talk about. Whatever.
I was reporting what happened, talking about how crazy it was, how the kickback, I had never seen anything like that, losing 25% of your fan base in a day or whatever.
But let's see what happens when someone else reports on the news about Ethan.
Yeah. But you have Keemstar and Scarce who are like, H3's a hypocrite. Dude, you're fucking, you call yourself a news source. Like, get fucking real. You're
YouTube
just
news.
Yeah,
If you let Keemstar and Scarce come into your life, there's something else going on there.
And then the next day, he's like, H3's a hypocrite. I didn't watch the podcast, but this guy says he's a hypocrite, and I didn't have any content today, so I'm going to post a video, and I don't really care about what it actually means. I'm news, but I don't actually look at things beyond surface value. I'm Keemstar. I make news for 12-year-olds.
I don't know why you see yourself as so above Keemstar when, frankly, you both report on the news and have a certain responsibility that comes from that platform. People were calling you a hypocrite, so Keem reported it. It's what he does. You can't blame him for talking about what other people are talking about when you yourself are guilty of using that argument that you're criticizing Keem for.
And then the next day, he's like, H3's a hypocrite. I didn't watch the podcast, but this guy says he's a hypocrite, and I didn't have any content today, so I'm going to post a video, and I don't really care about what it actually means. I was reporting what happened, talking about how crazy it was, how the kickback. I had never seen anything like that, losing 25% of your fan base in a day or whatever.
Oh, but you're not a journalist. You don't have time to be held to the same standard, right?
Of needing to reach out to anyone.
Not a journalist. This is not the New York Times. I'm some fucking dude who's about to watch my employee eat a jar of mayonnaise. What research do you expect me to do exactly? What research do you expect me to do exactly? What research do you expect me to do exactly?
When really, the effect of your words is what matters. The effect being that, well, you show no sympathy to a man who you wronged and don't seem to really care if what you do affects other people. It's fine to have the opinion that you do on the matter. Obviously, you think he was being reckless considering his platform. There was a possibility that the people he was messaging would be underage. And I agree, but that doesn't change what happened. A simple apology is all that was needed. And you know what? Let's see that clip one more time.
Of needing to reach out to anyone.
Not a journalist. This is not the New York Times. I'm some fucking dude who's about to watch my employee eat a jar of mayonnaise. What research do you expect me to do exactly?
Well, Ethan, when you are being watched by literally millions of people every single day, your words carry more weight than the average person. As a result, when you make claims on your podcast, you have to be able to back them up.
What research do you expect me to do exactly?
And if he apologized, then frankly, I would have said, okay. He owned up to it. Nice job. But he didn't. And if he does acknowledge it, frankly, I expect the response to be one of three things, or any combination. Saying that he's not a journalist as a get-out-of-jail-free card for why he doesn't have to do his research. Ignoring the criticism and simply calling the person a clown, or going on a drunken rant where you come across like an unhinged moron. Internet Unwinds did a great video about this where he went over a lot of the building criticisms of Ethan and made some great points. I recommend that you all go over and give it a watch if you have the time.
Nobody likes cancel culture until they get an opportunity to cancel someone.
What research do you expect me to do exactly?
The truth about the podcast is that Ethan and Hila probably haven't changed all that much in the past few years. They're pretty much the same people. The difference now is that instead of doing one 14-minute video a week where they have lots of quality control and can hide Ethan's obvious character flaws, particularly that he's very headstrong and unlikable when someone calls him out, they now have hours of content posted every week, which will inevitably be picked apart by people like myself. He's just a dick, and not an entertaining one either. Instead of being a likable goofball who is willing to criticize people but ultimately just wants the best for everyone, in the show he is extremely jaded, cynical, defensive, and stubborn. He's constantly making statements that he can't back up, and frankly, I know how that is. I've made videos in the past that are straight up bad. But Ethan hasn't made any point to improve his conduct on the show at all. He continues making the same mistakes over and over again. Ultimately, the best episodes of the H3 podcast are when Ethan isn't talking. And hands down, the worst ones are when it's just him and Hila. Everything that is needed for a professionally produced podcast is here. Plenty of funding, 2 seemingly interesting hosts, connections with lots of interesting guests. On paper, this should have been a hit. But ultimately, it's not very good, and that's because Ethan doesn't care. He doesn't care to do his proper research. He doesn't care to treat his guests with dignity. He doesn't care to honestly address criticism. And if he doesn't care, then why should we?
One subject that sparked quite a bit of discussion was the announcement of FUPA, which was Ethan and Hila's ambitious passion project to stand up to copyright abuse across YouTube.
In H3H3's video, he talked about the FUPA fund. Now let me give you some backstory.
How about you look at the fucking FUPA fund? When has that shit been active? It's sitting there with $0 in the fund, and he ain't doing shit with it. It wasn't even active at all.
Make FUPA great again.
Ah yes, FUPA, the Fair Use Protection Act. The silver bullet of all H3 conspiracies. One shot, and the H3 fan is no more.
Where is the money? I just want to go on record and say that H3H3 and this podcast can pound some serious sand.
Where did the money go? Where'd the money? You won the lawsuit. Where'd the money go?
The Fair Use Protection account was created by Ethan on May 26, 2016, following the community response around H3H3's impending lawsuit. The $170,000 raised was to be placed in an account with Morrison Lee and used not only for Ethan's legal fees, but also to aid the fight against copyright abuse in the community through FUPA. This was an incredibly selfless venture that was met with universal praise from the community, and it attracted attention as big as Time magazine magazine with an article titled, "This YouTuber raised $130,000 and wants to change the site forever." In a comment made from Ethan to Time magazine, he called copyright abusers bullies and stated that, "For us, it's just making a stand against it and letting people know they can't do that." When asked about the donations to the GoFundMe for his lawsuit, Ethan stated, "They didn't give us money because they like us. They did it because they wanted to protect that principle." When discussing what FUPA was, Klein stated that anyone who's bullied, big or small, basically at ours and our lawyer's discretion, can tap into these resources to fight back. "We don't want to touch a single cent of this. We want to use it as an umbrella for the YouTube community." And when talking about the account, he describes it almost as a YouTube union.
And even now, guys, the FUPA continues to grow. The FUPA shall protect all of us. We have a YouTubers union, we have money, we have an organization, we have lawyers. Guys, this is like a new chapter for fair use on YouTube.
Once again, FUPA was announced on May 26, 2016. FUPA began helping people on May 28, 2016. FUPA was finalizing their status as a non-profit on June 15, 2016. And FUPA became inactive September 21st, 2016. So naturally, many people found it disappointing that the fund was depleted and the account became inactive in just 4 months. One of these people was actually some ordinary gamers.
How about you look at the fucking FUPA fund? When has that shit been active? It's sitting there with $0 in the fund, and he ain't doing shit with it. It wasn't even active at all. Yes, a fund designed to help YouTubers fight fair use issues. I guess it's not here anymore. I guess it's not functioning. Hey, shit, we forgot about it. It was great when it financed and served us.
Muda asks why the fund was inactive and why Ethan let it sit dead with $0 in the fund. Ethan responded to a question Muda essentially didn't ask and instead went on a rant explaining why the fund was depleted in the first place. This is really where I have to split the FUPA argument.
Well, I'm glad I actually have the opportunity to talk about FUPA because I see it being raised more and more about what a greedy scumbag I really am. So let me take you back on a little story time to explain once and for all, for Muda Hart and everyone, what really is FUPA. Yes, we are being sued for copyright infringement, and it's been hanging over our lives like a cloud these past months.
Yeah.
So back when we were sued, I explicitly said that we did not want to raise money because the community had already done so much for us. But Philip DeFranco, in his infinite wisdom, decided to raise money for us because he thought it was an important lawsuit for the whole community.
Which is why, as of recording this video, I am starting a GoFundMe to raise money for Ethan's defense.
And I will say that I am extraordinarily grateful to him because at the time, we definitely weren't rich. FUPA, the Fair Use Protection Account, was set up because we thought we had so much extra money that we would have all this leftover money after our lawsuit to help the community with fair use issues. That money will not be used for any other purpose. We will never see a penny of it. It is going straight from Philly D's campaign into an escrow account for the sole purpose of protecting fair use. And we will be its first client. And that's why we decided to donate $5,000 of our own money. But as the bills started piling up, and we soon realized that if we kept helping people, we were going to run out of money and be in a bad situation with the lawsuit, which was the entire purpose that people donated in the first place. It was our moral imperative to fight and win this lawsuit for the whole community. Over a year passed, and we depleted all of the money in the account. We showed one of our bills as things were heating up. For just 1 month was $50,000. All told, we ended up spending thousands and thousands of dollars of our own money on top of everything that was raised, but we were finally able to win the lawsuit.
There are people who want to know what happened to FUPA as that fund to fight copyright abuse. And then there are the people who think Ethan Klein pocketed the money and committed fraud. One of these arguments are not like the other. YouTube conspiracy theorists have thought of everything, from Ethan just pocketing the money to them using $170,000 raised to purchase their $9 million mansion. The numbers just don't add up. There's been a swarm of misinformation surrounding what happened to the FUPA fund, and despite what Ethan may say, it's not easy to get the details.
On top of all of that, this information is so easy to find. I've talked about it so many times that anyone who even cared a little bit to look would have no trouble finding this information.
From what I've been able to find, this topic has not been addressed in a clear manner at all, with the best explanation buried under a reply tweet all the way back in 2017. Funny enough, even 3 years ago, Ethan was just as smug about the same question, implying that there was some simple research that could have been done.
Over a year ago, in May of 2016, H3H3 and Gila uploaded a video talking about a new chapter for fair use on YouTube. Many YouTubers donated money to this because, quite frankly, it was just a very, very good, idea to create some type of escrow account where there's money there to help and fight for creators who are dealing with false copyright strikes. They said the FUPA Twitter account will give updates with what's going on and who they're helping and what they're doing. The FUPA Twitter account hasn't tweeted since September of 2016, in over a year. Where did the money go?
When he was asked simple questions by Keemstar, he responded by saying it's not his job to do research for you. Some of the information I'm going to use in the following segment also comes from his FUPA announcement and update videos respectively. But even then, I'm comfortable saying that with this information, it's not really readily available to find easily. Getting Ethan to address this has been like pulling teeth since 2016. The GoFundMe was started by Philip DeFranco rather than Ethan, and it brought in approximately $170,000. Keep in mind, this is before GoFundMe takes their cut and tax. The initial goal was just $15,000 and was raised by increments of $5,000 until it reached $100,000. In a later video, Ethan would explain that he didn't envision needing more than $100,000, which is likely why FUPA existed in the first place. The GoFundMe clocked in at approximately $120,000 at the time of the FUPA announcement, meaning that the first $120,000 raised was raised by people who literally didn't know FUPA would ever exist. Ethan claims that more than $15,000 of his own money went to the lawsuit. However, it's unclear at this time if that number includes the initial $5,000 he donated to the GoFundMe for FUPA. On February 15th, 2017, Ethan showed a bill for just the first month of legal fees that totaled approximately $54,000. He also claims that the final value they received from the initial GoFundMe was $150,000. In this, he talks about how he had to switch attorneys and that Ryan Morrison, the video game attorney who was running the FUPA escrow account alongside Ethan, was now no longer involved in the situation at all.
Hopefully I'll find out this month if I'll be in financial ruin for the rest of my life or not.
Yeah.
And even if you win, we are still in financial ruin because, first of all, well, let me just start by saying we had to switch attorneys. It was not working out with our previous attorneys. I think after GoFundMe took their cut, $150,000. And I'm sure that we're going to spend every dime of that and probably another $50,000 of our own money to defend this lawsuit.
One more thing to mention is that FUPA apparently did help a few creators with some of the money raised in the 4 months it was active, but they realized that if they didn't stop helping the community, they wouldn't have had the money to finish their own lawsuit, which the money was raised for in the first place. I mean, it's in the fine print. The lawsuit, of course, went on to set a legal precedent on fair use that benefited the entire platform. So to say that's a selfish gesture would probably be wrong. So where did the money go? Well, I think it's pretty fucking obvious that it went to where it was always supposed to go. The $170,000 became $150,000 after the fees, which then went on to help a few more people and lowered it a bit more until Ethan realized that the video game attorney wasn't working out, notably after a $50,000 bill, and the rest went to the fucking lawsuit. When asked, another lawyer named Nick Ricada basically confirmed that this isn't some outlandish theory. But wait a minute, Nick, what about the Payday 2 DLC?
Clyde is a liar! He's a liar, you liar! That's not the truth. You didn't spend $15,000 of your own money. And in the video he uploaded yesterday, again, he said, I spent my own money on this lot. That's just not true. And I'll tell you why it's not true. Because like 3 years ago, there was this really popular game called Payday 2. And the creators of Payday 2 basically came out and said, look, we're gonna do an H3H3 DLC pack. We're gonna sell it for $5, and all the money we make, we're gonna give to H3H3 for the lawsuit.
If H3 used the proceeds from their video game DLC on the lawsuit, that is in fact their own money.
Now guys, okay, Payday 2 is out on, let's see, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, Xbox One, Xbox 360, Switch. Steam, Windows PC. This game is everywhere. The amount of money that had to have been made, if I were to guess, is at least $1 million.
$1 million. $1 million. Okay, fuck, that's ridiculous. Are you joking? First of all, this DLC released as a Steam exclusive and got a grand total of 555 reviews on Steam at the time of recording. The original game released way back in 2013, and this DLC didn't release until November of 2017, which was notably a few months after the game's Ultimate Edition released with all downloadable content already present. This pack was designed as the final piece of content for the game, which eventually they would release more, but that wasn't known at the time. The fact that someone thinks this DLC made $1 million is absolutely absurd. So if that's the FUPA argument that you yourself are trying to make, that Ethan pocketed the money and stole from the community, I'd say you're absolutely fucking crazy. But that wasn't Muda's argument. Ethan ignored the majority of what Muda was trying to say and went on a different rant entirely. What people like myself, Mudahar, and the Quartering really took issue with is why this idea was abandoned. Obviously, things didn't go according to plan. Business ventures fail. I totally get that. But on May 27, 2016, Ethan tweeted out, "People have expressed concern that FUPA would run low on funds. We have plans to keep the FUPA plump, voluptuous, and funded." Dude, it really sucks that a fund like this, which I feel like we desperately needed, is sitting with $0 left in it. It's just weird nearly every time people ask you why the fund is empty, you tell them how you spent it, but you never explain why it wasn't refilled. To a majority of the community that feels upset by this or backstabbed in some way, I assume this feeling comes from the fact that Ethan was a copyright advocate who wanted to change this site forever, according to at least your FUPA for Freedom video or the Time magazine article. The whole point being driven home by Tom in this video is that Ethan doesn't care. And honestly, if people think that Ethan only gave a shit about copyright when it affected him personally, well, I wouldn't blame a single one of them for thinking that. At the end of the day, I think that Ethan being a bit more transparent and having this discussion sooner would have probably remedied the situation. I'm sure there's a myriad of reasons behind the scenes why he couldn't continue FUPA or something like FUPA. I guess I just think it would have been awesome right now to have a fund setup that could have helped that kid legally against Just Destiny last year, or Mark After Dark in his dispute against Suzy Liu. A big sum of money could serve as a nuclear deterrent against guys like Onision, who mass claim content and eventually strike it down. If the risk of being sued is there, people are going to be less likely to commit acts that would get them sued in the first place. It's just common sense. I can imagine a hypothetical where huge creators and streamers backed FUPA and raised money through like a mass event charity live stream. I just see this as something that we desperately need right now, and something that Ethan went radio silent about 4 years ago after it no longer affected him.
Now we fully realize that people aren't supporting H3H3. Most of them are just supporting fair use.
Yeah.
And that's why this movement was so powerful.
To wrap up this video, essay, documentary, commentary, rant, allow me to bring you back to the beginning of the video to answer the question, why does everybody hate Ethan? Maybe hate is a strong word, and its only purpose in the question is to call back to an early 2000s sitcom and because it sounds good as a video title, but really, the reason why no one likes Ethan is because he isn't honest. He hides comments and only changes when he caves to public backlash. He intentionally pretends not to know the names of his critics, he misrepresents narratives about him, he makes promises about changing that he can't uphold, and he criticizes people for things that he himself is guilty of. The community that supported this couple so much that in many ways saved them from years of financial turmoil and a possible loss of their newfound fame now looks at them with disgust on its face. Because Ethan didn't give back to it. Once he was at the top, he stopped caring about the bottom. He only gives small YouTubers 20-minute spots on his podcasts and then shoos them away.
And if you think that we haven't come across videos like this guy's, we've watched this guy's videos a lot of times. And we never made a video about him. You know why? Because we're not fucking assholes. Because it's just mean. He doesn't deserve to be made fun of. And I mean, if you look at Leafy's channel. All he does is make fun of kids and like vulnerable people, like Joey's World Tour. There's no sport in making fun of these people. It's just sad.
Looking back at some of the first large-scale criticism that Ethan received, in particular his video about Leafy, he came across just as condescending and hypocritical as he does now on a weekly basis. And even though he was criticized for it by Leafy and of course Pyrocynical, everyone let it slide because Ethan's content was better than theirs, and oh, it's just Leafy, or oh, it's just a Leafy clone.
Fucking assholes.
Pyro is the real cancer of YouTube. I really just want to see his channel die out. Don't give Pyro a platform to defend himself. Okay, definitely not an asshole, dude.
These are dismissals of their arguments just because of who they are coming from, and ultimately, they blinded most people from being able to see the quality of Ethan's character. He came across here as not only morally self-righteous, but also extremely hypocritical. He criticized Leafy for making videos about kids when he had made videos about kids. He criticized Leafy for making videos about people like Joey's Super Cool Food Reviews when he had done arguably worse. And sure, there is an argument to be made here that Ethan and Leafy had their videos toned very differently. I can't deny that. Leafy was far more toxic, and what H3 was doing was much more lighthearted. But it doesn't help that Ethan was caught being very two-faced in Leafy's DMs. And I don't even necessarily disagree with Ethan's point in this video, but he clearly was not the one to be saying it, that this video wasn't just a blunder. It was foreshadowing of everything that would come.
What does this fucking sound like? The same fucking thing! But when I fuck up and there's some people that want my blood, what happens? What does he do? He jumps on the fucking hate wagon to get his guaranteed 2 million views. Like flip-flop, 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 flip-flop. Pick a fucking side, Ethan. Jesus. Like, this guy was my fucking friend, dude.
In his initial apology, Ethan talked about his depression and use of antidepressants and how he was feeling extremely down at the time, which contributed to his behavior, and in some ways was self-destructive.
So I want to make clear that I'm not using depression as an excuse for acting shitty. It's actually the opposite. I was not processing and handling criticism. I was losing my confidence, my ego was shattered, and therefore I couldn't make videos and all this other stuff, and that's what caused the depression.
And I understand that for sure. And I sympathize with him. I felt the same way, but that's not an excuse, and at the end of the day, we're all held to the same standard and have to take responsibility for our actions. You don't have to agree with the criticism about you, but you can't be surprised by it.
What have people been saying about me recently? That I'm a hypocrite, that I prioritize money over everything else, that I've thrown friends under the bus, that I'm ignorant and poorly informed, and spread misinformation, that I'm arrogant, that I cannot handle criticism, and that I've used people. And let me just say this, okay, for the record, that I am guilty of all of those things. And I'm not going to quantify it or make excuses or anything.
I can't say what the future holds for H3H3 Productions, or if Ethan will improve his conduct. I don't know if he'll continue getting into controversy after controversy and end up a washed-up loser with a slowly but surely declining podcast audience and fans who find it increasingly hard to like him. I just don't know, and I've been wrong before. What I can say for sure is that the idea that Ethan stopped caring about the YouTube community is flat out wrong. He definitely benefited from it and acted like he cared. We all had his back for years, and we all gave him the benefit of the doubt time and time again. I wanted desperately to go back to that time when Ethan was taking on the bad guys and saving the day. But as time goes on, and more of Ethan's character is revealed, it's become pretty obvious to me that, well, he never cared in the first place.
Oh shit, all day, pray them niggas go away. Oh, we sell the clowns around, it look like circus show. This is not the album either, these are just the throwaways. This is still so cold when it drop, it's gonna be a motherfucking snow day. Hey, boy, it's good and he knows it. He don't say it, he shows it. I'm just like DeRozan. If I shoot it, it goes in. I'm in Cali just coasting. Get him so wet, then he coasters. I got a selfie with Oprah. I just ain't ever posted. And I'm in my happy place posted. I ain't frowned since 06. I ain't cried since 01. My bad like 6 Flags in your house is no fun. You can come back to mine, though. You're renting Cupid is fine now.